Every human being lives with a hidden narrative about themselves, a story that quietly runs in the background of their mind. This story shapes how they interpret the world, how they respond to challenges, and even how they dream about the future. The problem is, most people never question the script they are following. They live in assumptions passed down by society, family, or past experiences, and those assumptions become invisible chains. When you look in the mirror, you may think you are only seeing your physical self, but in reality, you are seeing the reflection of those beliefs. For example, if you grew up being told you are not enough, that script becomes part of your self-perception, and even in moments of success, you feel undeserving. On the other hand, if you were constantly told you are strong and capable, you build resilience to face setbacks. The truth is, who you believe you are will always be stronger than who you really are, because the belief determines action. If you think you are weak, you will avoid risks. If you think you are strong, you will take on challenges. So, changing the way you see yourself is not about faking confidence or pretending to be someone else. It is about rewriting the story you tell yourself. The moment you shift your inner narrative, you unlock hidden strength. You realize you were never small. It was your perspective that made you shrink. This realization is not just inspiring, it is life-altering. Once you see yourself with new eyes, your choices, relationships, and destiny change forever. Imagine holding a lens in front of your eyes that colors everything you see. If the lens is dark, the world looks depressing, heavy, and full of obstacles. If the lens is bright, the same world looks full of opportunities, hope, and endless possibility. This is exactly how self-perception works. Your inner lens determines how you see yourself, and through that, how you see life. A person with negative self-belief will interpret rejection as proof they are unworthy, while a person with healthy self-belief will interpret the same rejection as redirection to something better. The external event does not change, the meaning you give to it does. That meaning comes from the way you see yourself. Most people live trapped in a distorted lens, created by comparison, failure, or criticism. They measure themselves against impossible standards set by others and end up feeling small. But once you recognize that the lens itself is the problem, you gain power. You realize you can change the lens. This awareness is the first step to freedom. The question then becomes, how do you clean your lens? You begin by questioning your thoughts. Is it really true that you are not capable? Or is that just fear speaking? Is it true that others are better? Or is it just comparison draining your energy? Once you start dismantling lies you believed about yourself, you uncover a version of you that is limitless. The transformation is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to who you truly are beneath the false stories. When you shift your lens, life no longer feels like a battle you are losing. It feels like an adventure you are prepared for. This shift will permanently change the way you see yourself, because once you know your worth, you can never unknow it. One of the biggest mistakes people make in life is believing their identity is fixed. They think who they are today is who they must always be, and so they live inside a prison of labels. You might have called yourself shy, lazy, unlucky, or weak at some point, And then, that single word became a cage you never escaped. The truth is, identity is not carved into stone. It is written in sand, and every moment of awareness gives you the power to rewrite it. When you understand this, your world shifts dramatically. Suddenly, failure no longer defines you, it only refines you. Mistakes no longer mean you are unworthy, they mean you are learning. This realization will change the way you see yourself forever, because it proves you are not a finished product. You are a process, a constant becoming. Think about the caterpillar to itself. It may seem small, ordinary, and limited, but hidden inside it is a butterfly waiting to unfold. The transformation was always there. It only needed time and courage to emerge. You are no different. The labels you carry are not who you are. They are simply chapters of your story. When you stop saying, "I am this," and start asking, "Who am I becoming?" you give yourself permission to grow beyond the cages you accepted. Life is not about defending your identity, it is about expanding it. Once you embrace this truth, you can no longer see yourself as stuck. You see yourself as a work of art in progress, evolving every single day. Every action you take is influenced by the image you hold of yourself. If you believe you are confident, you act confidently. If you believe you are unworthy, you unconsciously sabotage opportunities. This concept is known as self-image, and it is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. For instance, consider someone who wants to start a business, but secretly believes they are destined to fail. Even if they try, they will hesitate, delay, and pull back at the first sign of difficulty. Their actions will align with their hidden self-belief, not their conscious desire. On the other hand, a person who sees themselves as resourceful and resilient will approach the same challenge with determination and persistence. The difference is not in talent, luck, or opportunity. It is in self-image. Here lies the real secret. When you upgrade the way you see yourself, your actions naturally rise to match that new vision. You do not need to force motivation. It flows effortlessly because your identity and your behavior are aligned. This is why changing how you see yourself has permanent effects. It rewires your actions, habits, and results. Think about someone who once struggled with public speaking, but began to view themselves as a leader whose voice matters. That mental shift alone transformed their performance. The same can happen in your life. Self-image is like a thermostat. It always pulls you back to the level you believe you deserve. But once you raise the thermostat, once you expand the way you see yourself, your whole environment adjusts to match. And that single shift can forever change the quality of your life. Another crucial factor that changes the way you see yourself is the story you attach to your past. Most people allow their past failures, heartbreaks, or rejections to become proof that they are not good enough. They replay old memories like broken records, reminding themselves of mistakes they made years ago. And in doing so, they chain themselves to an outdated version of who they used to be. But your past is not a prison, it is a classroom. Every painful experience carried a lesson meant to shape your strength, not your shame. Imagine if you began to look at your past not as evidence of weakness, but as proof of resilience. Instead of saying, "I failed," you would say, "I survived." Instead of saying, "I was rejected," you would say, "I was redirected." The story completely changes. Once you see your past through this lens, you realize you have been carrying evidence of your strength all along. You endured, you learned, you grew. And that makes you far stronger than the version of yourself who never faced difficulty. This new interpretation will change the way you see yourself forever, because it reclaims power from the very moments that once hurt you. Your scars are not signs of defeat, they are signs of survival. The person who went through all of that and is still standing is not weak, they are extraordinary. When you embrace this truth, you stop running from your past and instead use it as fuel for your future. And that simple shift can make you see yourself as unstoppable. The people around you also influence the way you see yourself. From childhood, many of us absorb labels and judgments from family, teachers, or friends. Maybe you were called careless, slow, or unworthy, and over time, those words became part of your identity. But here is the truth. Other people's opinions are not facts. They are reflections of their own limitations. When you base your self-image on external voices, you hand over control of your life. Imagine if a teacher once said, "You'll never amount to anything," and you carried that voice for decades. Every failure would feel like confirmation, even though the statement was never true. The power to break free lies in recognizing that no one gets to define you except yourself. Think of great innovators, artists, or leaders in history. Many of them were doubted, criticized, or ridiculed. But they chose not to see themselves through the eyes of their critics. Instead, they created their own vision. This is the lesson. The mirror you look into should not be someone else's opinion, but your own truth. The moment you stop giving weight to external voices, you reclaim your inner authority. You realize you are not who others said you were. You are who you decide to become. That shift is so profound, it changes the way you see yourself forever. Another perspective shift comes when you recognize the difference between self-worth and achievement. Most people tie their worth to what they accomplish, believing that success equals value. But this creates a fragile identity. The day you succeed, you feel worthy. The day you fail, you feel worthless. True self-worth is not about what you do, it is about who you are. You are valuable not because of your job, income, or achievements, but because you exist. Think of a newborn child. No one questions the worth of a baby, even though it has accomplished nothing. Its worth is intrinsic. That truth never disappears. We just forget it as we grow older and start attaching value to grades, awards, and titles. When you finally realize your worth is unconditional, your entire life changes. You stop chasing validation, you stop fearing failure, and you begin to live with freedom. This will change the way you see yourself forever, because it anchors your value in something unshakable. Achievements may come and go, but your worth remains. Once you embrace this, you no longer see yourself as fragile. You see yourself as priceless. Comparison is one of the most destructive habits, shaping the way people see themselves. With social media showcasing highlight reels of others' lives, it is easy to feel like you are always behind. You see someone with more money, better looks, or greater success, and immediately your inner critic whispers, you are not enough. But comparison is a lie because it ignores context. You are comparing your behind the scenes struggles to someone else's edited front stage. The truth is, no two lives are the same, and no two journeys are meant to be identical. Imagine a rose comparing itself to a sunflower. It would feel small. Yet, both flowers are beautiful in their own design. Your uniqueness is your strength, not your weakness. When you stop comparing, you realize your timeline is perfect for you. Every experience, every delay, every struggle is shaping your growth in ways you cannot yet see. Instead of asking, "Why am I not like them?" you begin asking, "How can I be the best version of me?" This perspective shift will change the way you see yourself forever, because it frees you from the prison of comparison. You stop living as a shadow of others and start shining as your authentic self. A powerful way to change the way you see yourself is through the practice of gratitude. Most people focus on what they lack, and in doing so, they reinforce a narrative of insufficiency. They say things like, "I don't have enough money, I'm not successful enough, I'm not attractive enough." This constant focus on scarcity creates a self-image rooted in lack. Gratitude flips the script. When you begin to count what you do have, your strengths, your progress, your opportunities, you shift into abundance. For example, instead of saying, "I'm not where I want to be," you could say, "I've grown so much from where I was." Instead of saying, "I don't have everything," you could say, "I already have more than I once dreamed of." This shift in focus changes not only your mood, but also your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is constantly behind, and you start seeing yourself as someone who is already blessed and capable of more. Gratitude is not about ignoring goals. It is about realizing you are already enough while you pursue them. That realization permanently changes the way you see yourself, because it roots your identity in fullness, not emptiness. One of the most transformative realizations you can have is understanding that your thoughts are not facts. Every day, thousands of thoughts pass through your mind, some encouraging, some discouraging, but most people mistakenly believe every thought is true. If the mind says, "You're not smart enough," they accept it. If it says, "You'll fail," they obey it. The reality is, thoughts are like clouds passing through the sky. Some are dark, some are bright, but none of them define the sky itself. You are the sky, not the cloud. The moment you learn to observe your thoughts, instead of identifying with them, you change the way you see yourself. You realize you are not the voice of doubt in your head. You are the awareness listening to it. This separation gives you freedom. The next time your mind tells you, "You can't," you can simply smile and say, "That's just a thought, not a truth." Over time, this practice rewires your self-image. You stop being controlled by inner negativity and start living from inner clarity. This single shift is enough to change the way you see yourself forever, because it proves you are not your doubts. You are the strength behind them. A major turning point in how you see yourself comes when you recognize the power of language. The words you repeatedly say to yourself become the script of your life. If your inner dialogue is filled with negativity, statements like "I can't," I'm not good enough, or I always fail, then your self-image will shrink accordingly. But when you consciously shift your language, you shift your reality. Think about the difference between saying, I'm trying to be confident, and I am becoming confident. The first statement sounds uncertain, while the second creates a sense of identity. Language shapes belief, and belief shapes behavior. Even small changes, like replacing I have to with I get to, can transform how you see your responsibilities and opportunities. For instance, saying, I get to go to work, reframes it as privilege instead of burden. Over time, these subtle shifts create a new self-image grounded in empowerment. You begin to see yourself not as a victim of circumstances, but as a creator of your reality. This change in language is not just motivational, it is transformative. It plants seeds of strength in your subconscious that grow into unshakable confidence. Once you understand this, you realize that the way you talk to yourself will forever change the way you see yourself. Another transformative realization is that failure is not the opposite of success. It is a vital part of it. Most people see themselves as failures. After a setback which damages their self-image, they think failure means they are unworthy or incapable. But in reality, failure is evidence that you are trying, stretching, and daring to go beyond your comfort zone. Every great inventor, entrepreneur, or leader in history has failed countless times before achieving greatness. Thomas Edison famously reframed his failures by saying he found 10,000 ways that won't work. That perspective shift is crucial. When you begin to see failure as feedback instead of defeat, you no longer see yourself as broken. You see yourself as growing. Imagine if every mistake you ever made was simply a stepping stone leading you closer to mastery. That realization changes your self-image from someone who loses to someone who learns. The truth is, the only real failure is refusing to try. Everything else is progress. Once you adopt this mindset, your confidence skyrockets because you stop fearing mistakes. You begin to see yourself as resilient, courageous, and unstoppable. This perspective will permanently change the way you see yourself forever. One of the deepest shifts in self-perception happens when you stop defining yourself by circumstances and start defining yourself by possibilities. Many people look at their current situation, whether it's financial struggle, lack of recognition, or personal challenges, and conclude, this is who I am. But circumstances are temporary. They are not your identity. You are far bigger than your current environment. Think of a seed buried in the soil. At first glance, it looks small, fragile, and insignificant. But hidden inside is a mighty tree with branches that can provide shade, fruit, and life to countless others. Your circumstances may hide your potential, but they cannot erase it. When you begin to see yourself not as a product of your situation, but as a carrier of infinite possibility, everything changes. Instead of saying, I am broke, you say, I am learning to create wealth. Instead of saying, I am stuck, you say, I am preparing for growth. This subtle but powerful shift transforms your self-image from helpless to hopeful. You start living with vision instead of limitation. And once you learn to see yourself through the lens of potential, you can never go back to the old way of thinking. That shift will change the way you see yourself forever. Self-discipline also plays a critical role in how you see yourself. Every time you make a promise to yourself and keep it, you build trust with yourself. Conversely, every time you break your own promise, whether it's skipping a workout, procrastinating on a goal, or indulging in habits you vowed to quit, you weaken your self-image. You start seeing yourself as unreliable, incapable, or weak. But the moment you begin honoring your commitments, even in small ways, you shift your identity. For example, waking up at the time you said you would, drinking water instead of soda, when you promised to eat healthier, or finishing a task you committed to. These small wins stack up. Over time, they create a new self-image of someone who is disciplined and dependable. And once you see yourself as disciplined, your actions follow naturally. You no longer rely on willpower alone. Your identity drives your behavior. Self-discipline is not about punishment. It is about alignment. It is about proving to yourself that you can be trusted. This realization changes the way you see yourself forever, because it transforms you from someone who doubts their ability to someone who believes in their power. Forgiveness is another key element in reshaping how you see yourself. Many people carry guilt, regret, or shame from past mistakes, and this baggage becomes a heavy filter through which they view themselves. They replay the times they hurt others, missed opportunities, or made poor choices, and those memories make them believe they are unworthy of love or success. But holding on to guilt does not heal. It only chains you to the past. Forgiveness, both for others and for yourself, is the act of releasing those chains. When you forgive yourself, you acknowledge that you are human, imperfect, and learning. You stop punishing yourself for being less than flawless. This does not mean ignoring responsibility. It means accepting responsibility while choosing growth over guilt. Imagine looking at your past mistakes and saying, "That version of me didn't know better, but I do now." This perspective turns wounds into wisdom. Forgiveness shifts your identity from a person trapped in regret to a person free to grow. It allows you to see yourself as worthy of joy, love, and success again. Once you embrace forgiveness, you will never see yourself the same way again, because you will finally see yourself with compassion, and that compassion changes everything. One of the most liberating realizations is that growth is not linear. Many people see themselves as failures because they experience setbacks after making progress. They think, "I was doing so well, and now I'm back at square one." But this is a false perception. Growth is a spiral. It loops upward with dips and turns, but it always moves higher. Imagine climbing a mountain on a winding path. At times, you might feel like you are going sideways or even downward, but in reality, you are still ascending. When you understand this, you stop seeing setbacks as proof of weakness and start seeing them as natural parts of growth. You realize that even when you stumble, you are not the same person you were before. You stumble with more wisdom, resilience, and perspective. This shift changes the way you see yourself because you stop labeling yourself as inconsistent or broken, and instead recognize yourself as evolving. The dips no longer destroy your confidence. They confirm your humanity. Once you embrace this, you live with patience, and persistence, knowing every step, forward or backward, is still part of your upward journey. That perspective will forever change how you see yourself. Another perspective shift comes from realizing that your value is not in being perfect, but in being authentic. Society often teaches us to wear masks, to act confident even when afraid, to act happy even when broken, to act strong even when exhausted. Over time, these masks become heavy, and people begin to confuse the mask with their real identity. But the truth is, your authenticity is your greatest strength. When you stop pretending and start showing up as your true self, you begin to see yourself differently. You no longer feel like a fraud waiting to be exposed. You feel like a human being who is worthy just as you are. Authenticity does not mean exposing everything to everyone. It means aligning your inner self with your outer expression. When your words, actions, and values match, you experience inner freedom. This shift will change the way you see yourself forever, because it removes the pressure of performance. You no longer need approval from others to feel complete. Instead, you live from a place of self-acceptance, which is far more powerful than perfection. A transformative realization also comes when you understand the power of contribution. Most people see themselves through the narrow lens of personal success. What they achieve, what they earn, what they gain. But when you begin to focus on giving, whether it is your time, your knowledge, or your kindness, you start to see yourself as someone who matters in the lives of others. Contribution expands your identity beyond self-interest and connects you to a bigger purpose. For example, when you help someone in need, you no longer just see yourself as struggling or ordinary. You see yourself as impactful, valuable, and capable of making a difference. This shift is powerful because it moves your focus from scarcity to abundance. Instead of asking, "What do I lack?" you ask, "What can I give?" That mindset not only uplifts others, but also reshapes how you view your own worth. You realize you are not small, you are part of something greater. Once you adopt this perspective, you will never again see yourself as insignificant. Your identity will forever expand to include your ability to positively influence the world around you. Another life-changing shift happens when you stop waiting for external validation and begin validating yourself. Many people live for the approval of others, the praise of a boss, the love of a partner, the recognition of society. When validation comes, they feel worthy. When it doesn't, they feel invisible. But external validation is unstable. It can vanish at any moment. The real transformation happens when you learn to affirm yourself. When you can look in the mirror and say, "I am proud of who I am becoming," regardless of what others think, you step into true freedom. Self-validation allows you to pursue dreams without fear of judgment, to recover from mistakes without drowning in shame, and to celebrate progress even when no one notices. You begin to see yourself as your own source of strength, rather than as someone dependent on external applause. This realization changes the way you see yourself forever, because it places your worth in your own hands. You no longer beg for recognition. You radiate confidence from within. The final and most powerful perspective shift comes when you realize that your identity is not limited to your past, your mistakes, or even your current struggles. At your core, you are limitless potential waiting to be expressed. You are not just a body living through routines. You are a soul capable of growth, creativity, love, and transformation. When you see yourself through this lens, life becomes more than survival. It becomes an unfolding journey of becoming. You stop asking, "Who am I?" in terms of labels, and start asking, "Who can I become?" That question expands your self-image infinitely. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to grow into a greater version of yourself. Every victory becomes proof of your evolution. Every day becomes a chance to step closer to your highest self. Once this truth sinks in, you will never again reduce yourself to your flaws or limitations. You will see yourself as a masterpiece in progress, capable of endless reinvention. And that realization, perhaps more than any other, will change the way you see yourself forever. Thank you for watching this video.